Yes, there's sidechain keying on there. The first insert point, you have two, one before and after the compressor and gate. This is where I'm going to insert outboard gear, a plugin from a SoundGrid server or what have you. I just declare where the send and return points are coming and going in the console. This is also where I choose to apply the Dyne 8, which is the multi-band compressor dynamic EQ. So if I tap the pull-down list, I can see the sockets and number sockets once I choose them, but top of the list after unassigned is Dyne 8. And if you tap the number here, you'll see you've got 16 of them. That's if you have DPAC. I can drop this on any input or bus. I'm going to hit apply now. And you see a composite of the multiband and the dynamic EQ running, but you can affect change on them separately by tapping these tabs. Now, what we've given people, and they kind of go, whoa, that's cool. If you've ever dialed in one of these frequency-dependent processors, you can be distracted by the highs and lows that are happening around. You're kind of looking for that frequency. Look what I can do. Our consoles have this sort of scope-targeted ability to cue things. So if you press and hold listen, and you tap one of those 4 blocks, this is going to become illuminated. Now in your ears, you're listening to just the low-mid frequency of that multiband compressor. Everything else is defeated. Gate, compressor, which is kind of neat. It allows you to do those surgical changes. And up top here is a little flashing set of cans. Now, if I'm in the middle of something at sound check, I get distracted. Oh, I got to go to another layer here and choose something else. And then I got to be another layer here. Uh-oh, beware, right? That's telling you there's a unique state of cueing happening somewhere. Now I can do one of two things. I can go back up to that layer, oops, and find it, or I can just tap that flashing headphone and it clears that state of cueing. This also works in the bank view. Actually, it works in several views, but like if I close out this window and I just want to cue up the parametric EQ of the kick drum because there's a honk at 200 hertz and the gate and the compressor are affecting it. So in the old days, analog console, you'd have to yank the insert out, put your headphones on and listen, right? Now I can just press and hold listen, tap the parametric EQ, and I'm listening to just that dry audio. So I can make some changes to it. And again, flashing headphones, tap it to clear it. You can do that all over the console on buses, inputs, matrices, whatever. Just press and hold listen and tap what you want to target in on. So it's a neat little scope. So we've got that inserted before the parametric. Next in line is the parametric. And once we get some audio passing back through here, you're going to see the RTA that we underlay that we now include on the screen view. It's become very popular to want to see RTA activity on inputs and outputs, so we added that. Now the parametric, if we go back to parametric settings, yes, you have 4 full bands of parametric. The outer bands can be shelves or additional high pass if you want, if you tap these guys. Is my arm blocking you? And your frequencies out of the box, let's put a cut on this guy. Let's make it narrow. Oops. Notice that I can only sweep it to 200 hertz. Well, what if I want a few more frequencies higher up? If you go to options, and by the way, this little section over here at the bottom of these, if you tap that, it can also be metering if you want. So some people don't realize there are 4 more buttons there. If I want to tweak something, there's all over this console. Yep.
What's that? One question. So is this metering? It's only for the master bus?
Could be.
Okay, but you can also do it for the whatever.
Yeah, I believe so. If we get into surface prefs or in the metering section. But in that 4 buttons underneath the meter or sideways are 4 more things. You can press the help button, which pops up all these little balloons, or what do they call them in cartoon era, which you can tap at, look at, and clear. Or I press and hold options. Where was I? Parametric. Okay, press and hold options. You see these 2 things with gears on them? Poke all the way around this console. When you press and hold options, there's some little secret thing you can do. And this will all happen while the console is running without affecting audio. I'm going to tap that, and now I can see that I have the ability to take that input to full range as opposed to being truncated by low, low, mid, highs. So if I hit full range, and I can do it just for this one channel or the whole desk, I tap outside the pop-up to clear it. Now you will see if I hit the frequency, I can sweep this all the way up to 20K. So out of the box, it comes bracketed. If you want to slide frequencies beyond their brackets, you have to unlock them with that little options gear. Okay, so I turn it off. You can have color fill or not, you know, it's up to you. Just one little place where you can look for little additional things. Also, you noticed up top, there's a little green bar with a gear as well. If I tap that, I can swap the order of the parametric and compressor. Something studio people like to do. I never personally wanted to do that live, but some people like to do that, so I can just swap them. And now you see that they are, there's a little arrow between them showing sort of an altered state of than standard. And I can do that for one channel, or I can make it do that for the whole desk. Okay, next in line is our compressor. Again, you have a little histogram that shows you the signature of compression that's happening. If I go to a DBX 160, it becomes a whole lot more aggressive. And we don't say that in writing, right? You know, oops. So there is a different flavor of compression. Watch if I go to the Optronic. You know, this becomes a lot more gentle. Very slow, right? You can see why that LA2A was favored on vocals and subtle things, bass and whatnot. So that little histogram, and again, you turn it on, you turn it off, you can see that the math, the work is happening under the hood. A lot of options. We also have a ducker in there for page. Would you ever want the use of a ducker for emergency or paging purposes?
Yeah, sometimes I use it when like I have like a MC speaking and
Okay.
there's like music in the background.
Yep.
You'll use it to duck them.
So that was added several years ago. There are several compressor models in here. The 1176, you know, again, there's like a 15-minute story between each of these, but you have a silver face and a black face version, 1176. People ask if we're ever going to do the purple one. You know, that was the last version, I think, what, in the early 90s or late 80s that came out. And I don't know, but maybe. So I'm just going to go back to a generic one. Again, all of these have emulations that you can hear little stories on. There's some place on YouTube where Dr. Rob talked about, you know, this one came from Abbey Road Studios and this one came from wherever in Paris. You have a button here called parallel path. Does everybody know what parallel compression is? Yes, yes, yeah, yeah, okay. Most people create that and they call it a crush group. For example, you know, you want your drums going to a stereo group where they get compressed, but you also send the drums dry. I'll use the example of a kick drum where I used to do parallel compression manually with bike splitters. You have one channel that's going to the mains, right? And the second channel, I'd run to a mono audio subgroup and I'd apply a gate and compressor, or maybe just a severe compressor, and blend the two so I hear an open papery sound. That's called a crush group. And most people are used to doing that. And particularly the early Avid, you know, SC48 profiles, you would hear the out of phasedness of what was going through two buses not going out the back door at the same time. And it was annoying, and people lived with it. This has parallel path built in. Every channel, you can do a dry and wet blend on every bus or every input. And some people don't realize that. That's a kind of a neat little utility. Now, if you want to do a whole horn section, obviously you're not necessarily going to use that. But you could take the horn section to a subgroup by itself and then blend your wet and dry, right? You don't have to take it to the mains and blend it with a crush group. But again, that audio path will often result in stuff being out of alignment, out of phase. Every bus summing scenario in our console is accounted for in that phase delay compensation spec of 0.68 milliseconds. You have an insert point behind the parametric and compressor and input offset delay tweaks if you want. And you can regulate these units in if you hit that options button again. We can be looking at feet, milliseconds, meters, samples. I heard a couple of years ago people were wanting frames for video purposes. I don't know why that's not there or if they're still looking at it, but they said they were looking at it. And by the way, notice this little pop-up window doesn't have apply or OK or a little X. Yet the larger pop-up has an X. This is an inconsistency across DLive and Avantis I don't have an explanation for, but how to get out of this screen is just to tap on the outside of it. And again, it clears it. So just be aware, there are sometimes different ways to exit. Now I've got an X up here that I can clear. It's weird. Output signal processing is not much different. I'm going to go over to AUX 1 here, and we'll look at the right side of the console. And if I hit the processing tab below it, I can see I have an opportunity to drop an external input on the bus, not going through an input channel. I have a single insert point before the parametric. The parametric is as was before on the other one. All right, now we added not only the 4 graphic EQs that we talked about, right? And you can see their filter cuts, how they're a little different as I cycle through these. Notice a wider shoulder. That DN360 has the tightest slice. That's why we all liked that back in the day. I think they still sell them for like $1,250. That's DBX blue. But we recently added a 5th tab that gives you 3 more sets of 4 parametric. So 12 more bands of parametric along with the 4 that you originally had. That's 16 bands of parametric to make little sliver slices on misbehaving lavalier mics or something, right? So we call that NEEQ. NEQ, I think it's a riff on phonics or something. We're like, why NEQ? Well, it's NEQ, mate. Whatever.
No, it's notch.
What?
Yeah, I thought the N was for notch.
Maybe. NEQ library. So any of our signal processing, I haven't mentioned this along the way, can have its own little library storing of its settings if you want to recall them onto other things on other days. There is a way to save an entire channel strip or output bus, and that is by tapping on the thing that's selected. You know, you got this little green flag up here. Let's go here. This is a little different than DLive. In this screen, I can change the color of something individually. There are other places to change the colors as well, but I can do that if I want. And you have this channel library there. So if I name this Jennifer's kick drum, she's got a killer DW that I've just dialed in beautifully, and I want to save the whole channel strip after the mic pre, you know, comp, gate, EQ, everything. I can save whole channel strips here by tapping that little flag, okay?